Good afternoon, everyone. This is Debbie Royce, CCDC's Corporate Secretary. I'd like to welcome everyone to this afternoon's meeting. Before we formally begin, I would ask everyone to please mute your line unless you're speaking. And we'll begin today by taking a roll call of the directors to ensure that we have a quorum present on the line. Please be so kind as to say present when we call your name. Henry Silverman.
Present.
Michael Carey.
Present.
Vincent Ionelli.
Present.
Jeff Little.
Present.
Lee Perlman.
Present.
Adam Schuman.
Present.
And was George Sunis able to join the call? Okay. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining today. Chairman Silverman, you have a quorum present and you can begin.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Good afternoon, everyone. I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the New York Convention Center Development Corporation for Wednesday, November 18, 2020. Before we get started, I will ask that everybody please mute their phone unless and until you are ready to speak. Also, for the record, I will ask that anyone wishing to speak, please be sure to state your name before you begin. I'd like to note for the record that due to public health concerns and as authorized by an executive order of the governor, this meeting will be conducted by teleconference. I will also note for the record that the public was given the opportunity to comment on today's agenda by submitting their written comments by 4:30 p.m. yesterday. I'd like to state for the record that no comments were received from the public. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. Before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of today's agenda items. If so, I would ask you to please make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time. We will then be sure that you may recuse yourself from any discussion or vote with regard to such item or items. Hearing none, we will note that that has been noted for the record. I'll now ask Robin Stout, President of the Corporation, to provide the President's report. I will also note for the record that this item is being presented for your information only and no vote will be required. Robin?
Thank you, Henry. Can everyone hear me? Should I take that as a yes?
Yes. Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you to all the directors for assembling even remotely. We greatly appreciate it, and I certainly hope everyone is well and safe. The last CCDC director meeting was held remotely at the end of June, June 24, and at that time the expansion project had just come off a 2-month pause due to the coronavirus. So let me review the status of the overall project since that time. First, let's talk about the transformer building. The directors will recall, of course, that the project has 2 different components. One is the approximately $100 million transformer building being constructed by Tishman Construction, and then the second, which I'll speak about, is the Lindley's-Turner $1.2 billion expansion. But let's focus on the transformer building first. The directors probably will recall that construction was never shut down because it was deemed essential as part of the Javits Field Hospital. And in fact, the acceleration of the generator equipment worked quite well. And Tishman was very busy during April and May during the bulk of the crisis, the COVID crisis here in New York, working to get the generating capacity done. So basically, that work has now been done, and the building is fully functional. And just to explain what fully functional means, for quite some time already, it's been taking Con Ed electricity off the grid, and it is currently powering existing Javits, where Alan and I are today. It is providing temporary power for the construction at the site, and of course, then it will power the expansion once the power is done. So that's one important part of what the transformer building is doing, and the second important part of what the transformer building is doing is that if the Con Ed grid goes down, the generators are fully operational now and will provide backup power. So both of those pieces of the transformer building are done and fully functional, as I say. We're not quite finished with the transformer building. We are finalizing permitting work. You recall that DASNY, the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York, remains the permitting authority for both pieces of the expansion project, the transformer and the expansion. And so we're working very closely with DASNY almost every day at this point to arrive at the final permit for the building. And then the last thing we're doing in connection with the transformer building is working out the last of the change orders. In connection with the work that was done in April and May of this year during the pandemic, there were a number of acceleration change orders and other change orders necessary to conclude this project, and those are coming to a conclusion as well. But I would like to point out to the directors that the last time we spoke about finances in connection with the transformer building, I said that the budget for that building was going to arrive between 98.5 and 99.1, and I'm happy to tell the directors that is still the projection. I am hopeful that we'll be on the low end of that, towards the 98.5, but basically the transformer building remains on budget. So let me stop there for a moment and ask if people have questions about the transformer project. Okay, let me move on to the expansion. Of course, again, the directors will remember that the expansion shut down at the end of March, was closed basically for 2 calendar months, April and May of 20, and reopened on June the 8th. It was a pause of approximately 10 weeks or 49 business days. But since that time, work has been going full tilt. In fact, for the past 6 weeks more, maybe 8 weeks or more, there have been over 900 workers on site. That's a higher number even than before the pause. There has been second shift work. There have been weekend work, both Saturday and Sunday. And so there's a tremendous amount of progress being made on the expansion site. So let me explain to you what that means. The building enclosures are essentially done, but for the atrium. You remember that the atrium is what will be the new entryway into the expansion at what used to be 39th Street and 11th Avenue. And that cladding or exterior is coming along very well. But basically the rest of the building exterior cladding is complete, which means that for the coming winter, all work will be enclosed, which is actually a good thing. It's not a COVID issue. Because the site is so vast. Remember, it's what's called a super block because it takes up 39th Street as well. So basically, it's 2 full city blocks, and workers do not need to be on top of each other. They're very spread out through the site doing work. But because the building is now enclosed, we don't expect to have winter weather delays over the course of the winter. The other thing that is quite visible at this point is that the new Expo Hall looks like an Expo Hall. The extra 100,000 square feet on level 3 is basically built out and coming along very well. If you go one space further up, the meeting room spaces are all being boxed out as well. You will remember that the meeting room space is going to be very flexible in terms of being able to convert to larger or smaller spaces. But any of the permanent walls that are necessary have gone up. The connecting corridors have gone up. So that's beginning to look like meeting room space as well. And up at the top of the expansion is what we call the ballroom or the special event space. And that also it has been boxed out. And you can get a real sense now standing in that space of how vast the space is, like very huge space with very high ceilings. And the gorgeous view west to the Hudson River and the sunset is already in place as well. So all those components are coming along. The truck marshaling building on the north side of the site is nearly complete, should be complete before the end of this year. It looks like a truck marshaling garage with very clean docks waiting to be used. And we actually expect that that portion of the Lindley's Turner expansion project will be turned over to CCDC, and therefore CCDC as early as before the end of this year. We certainly have our fingers crossed on that. And probably the latest visual progress can be seen on the roof of the truck marshaling garage. And that is two things. One is the pavilion. Directors have heard about the pavilion for some time already. You remember that that's our space up at the top of the truck marshaling building, which will seat 1,500, a largely glass structure. If you can get an angle from anywhere near the site, you will see that the steel structure of that pavilion is fully erected. And in fact, the roof for that structure is going on. The north wall of that structure is already in place. So there's a tremendous amount of progress that has been made on the pavilion. And lastly, then the greenhouse, which will be part of the farm. The directors will remember the farm is going to be to the east or the city side of the pavilion. And the steel structure of the greenhouse is also up. So a tremendous amount of progress being made, and interiors, both the plumbing, electrical, HVAC, et cetera, coming along. And I should again say that all COVID protections are in place. If any of you have been out and about, you probably have your temperature taken on a regular basis. You answer a short questionnaire. Every worker that comes to the site every day goes through that same process. No one is allowed on site without that COVID protective survey in advance. So keep our fingers crossed. We have been very, very fortunate in terms of being able to work through the pandemic to date. Let me say one more thing about the expansion building, then I'll pause for questions. Because of the pause, the directors will remember that Lindley's Turner put many claims both for schedule delay and cost increase on the table. I believe we briefly discussed that at our June meeting. Those claims continue to be reviewed, both on the state level and on the Lindley's Turner level. We have come a very long way in reconciling those claims. We are not quite there yet at a formal resolution of those claims, but we believe that we will come to a resolution which both protects a timetable that we need to finish the project and is within the dollars that have been set aside for the Javits project. In other words, because as you can imagine, Albany has been asking, it is not expected at this time that CCDC will need to ask for more funds in order to finish the project that I've been describing. So let me stop there for a moment and let me ask if people have questions about the expansion. Okay.
Robin, I think that you have an agenda item for approval, correct?
Well, I have several agenda items, but Henry, if I could, I just have one more thing to add to my president's report, which is one of the agenda items that's coming up for the directors today is an extension of the project management contract. Right? I will get into this more in connection with this item, but the actual project management contract being held by CCDC expires this month and therefore needs to be extended. So one of the things that the directors are going to be asked to approve is an extension of that project management contract until next June of 21. But there was going to be one change in the project management team, which is that the project director will be changing. The directors will remember Gus Mamus has been at these meetings for the past couple of years as our project director. But as we move forward with the extension of the contract towards conclusion of the project, Wahid Albert, who's with us here today, will be joining the project management team as the project director. And so if we just take a couple of minutes to Wahid to say hello and to introduce himself.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Wahid Albert, spelled W-A-H-I-D. The last name is Albert, A-L-B-E-R-T. And I'll be joining the team. I actually already started working on the project, getting familiar with the project and the team on the LLC side, and also the project management team and the subs that we need on this project. My background is I've worked for New York State Department of Transportation for over 36 years. primarily design and construction. My last position was the chief engineer for New York State Department of Transportation for 4.5 years. I retired from state service in September and started a position at AECOM as a vice president in the New York metro area. In my last position at DOT as chief engineer, I was responsible for $6.1 billion of annual design and construction projects. I was responsible for the maintenance of over 17,500 bridges and over 38,000 miles of highway. Part of the, my job is to deliver the capital program, which was had many projects, highways, bridges, but in addition to that, airports and train stations that we delivered in the last few years. And that's really, in a nutshell, my background, and looking forward to the responsibilities of this project and working with Robin and to bring this project to the finish line on budget and on schedule.
And I thank Wahid because he's been very active for many, many weeks already and very, very helpful. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that would be the end of my president's report. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Robin? If not, Robin, we have a action item regarding funding.
Yes, thank you. This first item will, in its general framework, will look familiar to the directors. The directors, of course, will recall that CCDC and CCOC have been working cooperatively for many years in order to address capital needs within the existing facility. Right? CCDC's legislative responsibility is for capital repairs, not only at the expansion, but within the existing facility. So some years ago, CCDC and CCOC worked out an agreement by which CCDC and CCOC would agree on certain projects to be done within the existing facility by the operating corporation, but to be funded by the development corporation. And so for many years, the directors have authorized various of these projects. As these projects come and get addressed, there are dollars that may be left over from prior projects, et cetera, different priorities arise. So two things that directors have been asked to do many times over the past few years is to both commit new dollars to certain projects, and then to commit to reallocate previously allocated dollars to different projects. And that's the nature of this first item before the directors today. So specifically addressing this item, what you will see is that CCDC and CCOC have worked very closely together on two things. One is that the project for the mechanical equipment room inside of existing Javits needs some extra money, $1.737 million to be exact. And that money is available from other projects which had available balances to it. So as you see in section 2 of your materials before you, we show both the need for the 1.7 for the mechanical equipment room project, and exactly where that $1.7 million would come from in terms of reallocations from prior projects. In section 3 of your in your materials is a slightly different discussion. That is additional funding for the upgrade of the existing facility fire alarm system. Money has been put against that in the past, as is recited in your director materials. There are additional costs associated with that project as it comes to a conclusion. And CCDC would ask the directors to authorize a $1 million contribution to that project. That $1 million would come from a fund that was established at the time that Site K across 11th Avenue from the Crystal Palace was returned to CCDC. Just to speak to that briefly, the directors probably will recall that what we call Site K, across the street from the Crystal Palace, across 11th Avenue to the east, where there's actually a vent shaft for the number 7 subway line today. That had been used by the City of New York and the MTA for a considerable period of time as staging for the number 7 construction. That staging finished some time ago, and at the time that that site was given back to CCDC, there was a $7 million payment that came to CCDC as a part of that. $6 million the directors previously authorized to be used for the Ballroom project that's coming along. And the last $1 million was reserved for potential other items. And now CCDC recommends that that last $1 million be allocated to the fire alarm project. With that, I would ask the directors to approve the allocation and a reallocation set forth in the materials before them.
Do we have a motion to that effect, please?
So moved.
So moved.
Michael Carey.
All right, it's Henry. I'll be happy to second it. Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. The motion carries. Robert Jones, Empire State Development Vice President of Contract Administration, and new addition to the ESD Javits team will now present a request for the adoption of revised procurement guidelines to the corporation. Robert, welcome, and when you're ready, please begin.
Good afternoon, Robert Jones, Vice President of Contract Administration at Empire State Development. This afternoon, the board is being asked to adopt the revised guidelines for the group awarding, monitoring, and reporting of procurement contracts as mandated by Section 2879 of the Public Authorities Law. These guidelines were previously adopted in July 2019 by the CCDC directors. There have been no substantive changes to executive orders and discretion to public authorities in the past year. However, in the past year, State Finance Law, Subdivision 6 of Section 163 was amended to increase the threshold amount from $200,000 to $500,000 for discretionary fine without a formal competitive process for small businesses, New York State certified minority and women-owned business enterprises, and service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. Empire State Development staff from the Legal Department, Contracts Administration, and Finance Departments reviewed the guidelines and incorporated state finance law changes, added a section to define pre-qualified lists, a separate section for conflicts of interest, and made minor revisions across the guidelines for clarity and consistency. On March the 26th, 2020, the ESD board adopted the revised guidelines, the 2020 guidelines, which are designed to govern procurements by ESD and its subsidiaries such as CCDC. A copy of the 2020 guidelines is attached, and approval is sought for the adoption by the CCDC directors of the 2020 guidelines. Thank you, and I'm available to address any questions.
Henry, are you ready to move it?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just said that, but I was on mute. So could we have a motion for approval, please?
Michael Carey, I'll move it.
Happy to second it. Any opposed? Good. If not, we'll move on to the next item, which Eunice Jackson, ESD Senior Counsel and longstanding member of our ESD Javits team, will now present a request for adoption of property disposition guidelines for the corporation. Hello, Eunice. When you're ready, please begin.
Thank you, Henry. Good afternoon, directors. My name, as Henry said, is Eunice Jackson. You were asked to readopt the property disposition guidelines in the same form as those adopted by New York State Urban Development Corporation, that is ESD, in March of this past year. The Public Authorities Reform Act of 2009 mandates that public benefit corporations such as ESD and its subsidiaries annually prepare and comply with guidelines regarding the disposition of property. As mentioned before, ESD directors adopted these guidelines in March of 2020 during the same meeting in which they adopted the procurement guidelines that Rob just reviewed. The guidelines require the appointment of a contracting officer ESD reappointed as its contracting officer, its Vice President of Contract Administration. The directors are requested to readopt the property disposition guidelines reviewed and adopted by ESD and to reappoint as contracting officer ESD's Vice President of Contract Administration. Thank you. If you have any questions, I will take them now.
Okay, if there are none, we'll entertain a motion for approval. And Eunice, I apologize for slightly mispronouncing your name.
Oh, no, not a problem. At least, I mean, you did a great
anyway,
job.
Do we have a motion, please? Michael, do you want to make a motion that I can second? To approve?
It's
Hello?
Vince Iannelli. I'll make the motion.
All right, thanks, Vince. Happy to second it.
Okay.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. The motion carries. Robin will now present a request to amend the contract for project management services that we referenced earlier. Robin?
Yes, Henry, that's exactly right. This is what I referenced earlier. ESD, the Empire State Development Corporation, and its subsidiary, the Convention Center Development Corporation, does not particularly have expertise in managing large-scale construction projects. And certainly because this Javits expansion project was one of the first design-build projects in the state of New York, the agency did not have particular expertise in design-build. So 4 years ago at the beginning of this project, ESD and CCDC advertised for a project management team to basically an owner's representative to help it through the construction project and through the design-build process. That team, after competitive bidding, was the Tishman Construction, with several of the sub-consultants named in your materials. And that team has been extremely active on both the Lindley-Turner expansion project and the Tishman Construction transformer project for the past 4 years. And has been very valuable in terms of moving these projects forward. That contract expired, as I believe I said, this month. And so it's time to extend that that contract for the balance of the construction of the project. So after having a back and forth with the PM team, CCDC is recommending that this the project management contract be extended until June 30th of 2021 for an additional $6 million. That is about the same burn rate that that contract has been paying off for the past couple of years. And as I say, basically the PM team will remain intact, except Wahid Albert will be our new project director. And so with that, I would ask that the directors approve the extension of the contract as set forth in the materials. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
If there are no questions
Robin,
for Robin, I'll go ahead, please.
Robin, why did you choose June 30th of 2021?
Because we believe at that point, virtually all construction should be substantially complete. Certainly, the transformer building will be behind us. We expect the base project, the base expansion project being put together by Lindley-Turner, and various concluding components. All of that construction should be done by, we're projecting will be done by on or approximately June 30th. And for the most part, after that date, should be basically close out at what I expect to be a much lower rate.
Okay.
Any other questions for Robin? If not, we'll entertain a motion. I'll make the motion for approval. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second. Michael Carey, I'm back, seconding motion.
All right, any opposed? Thank you, the motion carries. Robin will now present our final agenda item, a request for authorization for the corporation to enter into a legal fee reimbursement agreement with the New York Convention Center with the NYCOC Robin, when you're ready, please.
Yes, thank you, Henry. I think all the directors understand that Alan and I have been working very closely, hand in glove, to coordinate both the activities happening on the site and the budgets associated with those activities. Technically, Alan's responsible for operating. The Development Corporation is responsible for capital, but there are places that meet in the middle. And this may be one of those places, and we have tried to work out between us who gets allocated what, so that we can continue to move this project forward. And this is one of the kinds of items in front of you today. Obviously, in order for this project to be a success, when it is completed, it will need to be permitted for the kinds of events that we want to hold in the facility. As I believe the CCDC directors know, in the past, the New York City Department of Buildings has been the permitting agency for events. I believe the CCDC directors also know that the current construction going on is being permitted by DASNY. I believe I said that already in this meeting, right? So on one hand, you have the New York City Department of Buildings, who has been permitting shows in the existing facility, and on the other hand, you have the New York State Dormitory Authority, that is the permitting jurisdiction for the expansion. So as we come to a conclusion now with the expansion, which DASNY will permit when it's appropriate, the question then becomes who is going to permit the combined facility post-completion. We've been in touch with principals in the governor's office and others to have a conversation, and we continue to explore alternatives. And in order to fully explore those alternatives, we need the assistance of legal counsel. And so Alan and I work together to work on a retention of legal counsel, and the scope of work that legal counsel would be doing directly connected to working through who, how, and when permitting will be done for the finished combined facility post-completion. So what this item in front of you is seeking authorization for is just a formal agreement between CCDC and CCOC that CCDC will reimburse CCOC for part of those legal fees, as you see in your materials, up to a maximum of $200,000 while we try to work this item out. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Michael, I'm happy to move, barring any questions.
All right. If there are no questions, we need a motion for approval. I think Michael began it.
Yep, so moved.
Do we have a second? Second, please. Fine, thank you.
Second.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. So that's our last item. But I want to thank everyone for their participation today. I'd like to thank Robin and Alan, not even Alan, and Alan, for their work on this project. It's quite amazing that we are continuing to complete in this uncertain world that we live in. There being no further business, I will call for a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Michael. Thank you all very much, and please stay safe.
You too.
Be safe, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.